Today is the day that we call Maundy Thursday or Holy Thursday, when we remember the Last Supper, when Jesus broke bread and shared a cup with his disciples, and when John records Jesus as having washed the disciples' feet. We really hope, if you're watching this early in the day, that you'll be able to join us at church at 7 p.m. for what will be a wonderful living Last Supper with members of our congregation participating. I hope we'll see you there. For our reading today I selected 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 to 26. I thought this was an interesting passage because this is Paul's understanding of the Lord's Supper. And remember, Paul was not in that upper room. It's not a direct disciples account. It's what was being passed on in the Christian community and in the tradition that Paul is aware of. And he says in verse 23, "For I received from the Lord what I also handed on to you." So he says he received it from the Lord. So we wonder, is this part of what the risen Christ revealed to him at some point? And talks about the exchange of the bread and the cup. And our verse for the day is verse 25. "In the same way, he took the cup also after supper, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me.'" And Paul's brief recollection of the Lord's Supper, the giving of the bread and the cup, and remembering Jesus' sacrifice, tells us that in the early church, in the decades following Jesus' life and ministry, following his death and resurrection and ascension, that the Lord's Supper, remembering that meal, had obviously already become a very significant moment for the early church and for Christ followers. And on Maundy Thursday, we remember that both in the service that we have, that this was this last meal that they shared before all those terrible events that happened in the following hours of Jesus' betrayal and arrest, and his trial and his scourging and beating and his crucifixion. And in that meal, that symbolic value of the bread being broken, the wine being poured, just like Jesus' body was broken and his blood poured out as he was wounded and pierced by a spear, that every time the church gathered to say a meal, every time they broke bread together, it was a reminder, just like that physical food nourished and nurtured their bodies and enabled them to live and to do ministry and to function and survive, that in the same way we are to remember that we are to partake of Jesus and to allow Jesus to nourish and nurture our spirits so that Christ can become a part of us. There is a very real sense physically that we are what we eat, and spiritually that's also true. And we want to be remembering Jesus as we partake of the bread and the cup and give thanks for his sacrifice for our sake, and remember that every time we eat it, we proclaim the Lord's death until he comes again.